This video is somewhat related to my previous video on transhumanism, but it is nonetheless a different topic. And the topic of today is how we convert information to action and how ideas are implemented. And the reason why it's related in some sense to the video on transhumanism and human progress and such is because we need to ask the question of how people process information, how they go about turning information into action in their lives, and not just individual lives, but on a wider scale, societal scale. And we will see that it happens to be the case that people are generally not very motivated by information itself, facts, data points. Now, I've alluded to this on occasion in the past, but I thought making a wholesale video on this would be better, just so as to parse out all of the points. Now, the idea that people can be motivated by facts and details and data is a very tempting one to fall into. I, in the past, have fallen into this only to be rebuked by my own very nature. So let me give a very personal and anecdotal example before we go on to better examples, more macro examples. Before my insomnia got progressively worse, I would regularly attend the gym. But even when I was doing that, after I had consumed the so-called red pill, I began to notice that my motivation had largely dried out, which is to say, in younger, more tender years, I wanted to go to the gym. And the reason why was I wanted to look good, I wanted to be fit. I basically was going to the gym predicated on my reproductive desires, my desire to look good to the opposite sex. When those desires were largely discarded, I decided I'd still go to the gym, and there were good health reasons. There were reasons such as preventing or slowing down atrophy, maintaining good posture, etc., etc. But over time, those reasons dried up, and they just weren't very motivating overall. And I began to realize that the emotional connection to looking good, vanity, things like that, a very blue pill mentality, mind you, that was a much greater motivator of putting information to action than the information itself. The information itself didn't really matter. It didn't really matter that there are health benefits to resistance training. It mattered that, back in the day at least, that I looked good and that I looked presentable and fit, etc. Health benefits were secondary, and in some cases tertiary. And you see this replicated, by the way, in many gym goers, to the point where they will do things that are deleterious to their health, such as use ECA stacks. That stands for, by the way, ephedrine, caffeine, aspirin, which is a noted kind of bro-science way of helping you lose weight because it suppresses appetite and increases your thermogenesis. Just an example. They'll overindulge in steroids and all kinds of things that have nothing to do with health. It's all vanity. So this is a very common thing. That is to say, people go to the gym to look good, mostly for reproductive reasons and personal vanity reasons than for the health benefits. And so too is it with just about every other piece of information out there. Almost everything we do for reasons that tend to validate our emotions and our deepest instincts. Things that, again, jive and gel how we are and what we are as human beings. Another common example is nutrition. Now, by and large, we know that sugar is a bad thing now, that excessive carbohydrate consumption, assuming you're not running marathons every day, is not a great thing, etc., etc. Well, let's look into this. Be it as it may, we all know these things, and yet there's still major health issues cropping up continually due to sugar. And this is because, one, of the way sugar interacts with our physiology, specifically the dopaminergic system. We know how these things interact with our body, and yet we struggle, that is, as a society, to implement the information we have on hand, and by now there's tons of information implicating sugar in arthritis, coronary problems, heart disease, diabetes, obviously, and a host of other things, obesity. We know these implications, and yet having this information just isn't good enough. And let's think of a hypothetical here. We merely and blandly present information to people, which is what we've been doing, about the sugar crisis and about how sugar is harmful to their health. Well, okay, some people will get on board with that, but they will not be the majority. The majority of people will not get on board with sugar's bad for me. I just will skip out on it completely. It's just not good. I'm more concerned with the health. The facts and details and information are really motivating. They're not. Far better it would be, unfortunately, to whip people up in some sort of nationalistic ideological fervor that would push them to renounce sugar. Imagine some bizarre nationalistic ideology that were heavily infused with religious elements that claim that sugar were the byproduct of the devil. And they get completely carried away by the ideology, honestly and fervently believe that sugar is satanic in some sense. You better believe that there would be far, far more people who would avoid sugar, which is very unhealthy, mind you, as we know, than people who would avoid sugar merely for reason of the facts and the data and what have you. Not everyone would. There would still be the temptation, but people would be much more motivated because it would tap into the need for emotional appeal. And ideology tends to do that. Ideology tends to be a much greater motivator than just facts and data. And so it holds true for just about everything. If we think about transhumanism, the topic of the previous video, the same would be true. You're much more likely to introduce things that don't gel and are incompatible with human nature if you make these things compatible vis-a-vis ideology. Or even better, you create some ideology that taps into deep-seated human desires and needs. Merely having information out there is a poor motivator. And this also, I should add, leads to my skepticism about human progress. Humans don't work well off of facts. They don't work well off of information. They don't work well off of mere data points. They need emotional motivators. You could tell somebody that if they continue X lifestyle, it's going to lead to a premature death. That may or may not mean something to the individual, but what if you said to the individual, it's going to lead to a premature death if you don't cease and desist in this particular lifestyle, and your young children will be deprived of a father? Well, then the motivation is there and everything kicks in, and the person is much more likely to succeed at reforming his negative lifestyle and turning it into something good for the benefit of his children. All emotional motivation. It has very little to do with the facts. I mean, you could create bucket loads of data sheets and present them to people. They won't care a whit. And this tends to be the name of the game no matter what you're doing. You could actually improve the nutritional status of society through propaganda campaigns. I mean, it's not well known, but Adolf Hitler, say what you want of him, had some ideas concerning nutrition, and whether his ideas were sound, that's a separate issue. And he was partly able to implement it due to the ideology of National Socialism. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that, unfortunately, that tends to be the only thing that human beings respond to. Strong emotional incentives coupled by ideology that taps into those reward systems. Presenting facts just doesn't do that. I know from personal first-hand experience, that's the gym experience, of course, and it applies across the board to just about everything you can think of. Nutrition, relationships, policy, etc., etc. It's just not going to happen. And all of this, ultimately, for me, leads me to be very skeptical about any progress we can actually make, because we can discover facts, we can present information, and it can be informative and it can be interesting to some people, and there might even be a few people that take the facts and data and run with it and say, hey, this is great, I'm going to implement this in my life. But the vast majority of people are slaves and beholden to their emotional needs and the need to tap into something greater than they are, be it religious, ideological, political, or any combination thereof. That just seems to be the nature of the game when it comes to human beings, and I don't think we're going to get past that. And at best, I think, given this model, we'll stumble forward, and all we can do is hope for not destroying ourselves in the process with our inability to properly deal with and process information and make it the best part of our lives. Because when I look outside and look at the world and my fellow human beings, and myself included, I'm no better, I'm no different, I don't see much reason for hope on this front. And thus the conversion of information to action is something that I don't know what we're going to do about, because we're very, 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 very poor at it. Anyway, related topic, I wanted to put this out there as an afterthought to the previous video, and also because it's separate and nonetheless still related. Hopefully, again, as my health holds up, I will check you out later. Take care. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.